The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to FIlmjitsu, the podcast that wields films like deadly weapons. We are your hosts. I am Mike.
And I am Jay.
On this week's episode of FIlmjitsu, Jay had to watch Blood Beach, a 1980s horror movie starring no one that I assigned him as our summer kickoff. I'm excited to hear what he had to say about it. And after we do that, we're going to do our bottom 5 beach scenes. We'll play a little pick two, kick two, and then Jason gets the opportunity to return the favor by letting me know what film I'm going to watch for our upcoming episode. But before we dive into all of that, let's go ahead and roll the trailer, if there's a trailer, for Blood Beach.
If not, we'll just roll some completely incomprehensible dialogue and just... Do you ever notice that? Like on Netflix, when a movie doesn't have its own trailer, they'll just insert some random scene.
Yep.
And you're sort of supposed to gauge from that one scene.
Yep.
If they did that with Blood Beach, not a single person in the history of ever would actually press play. No one. So there better be a trailer or else no one's going to see it other than me, thanks to this fucking show.
The beach is a weird beat for us cops. You've got the kids, the old people, the street fiddlers, those singles, the crazies all lost in their own world. There was every form of human life on this beach. But under the beach, there was this horrible thing. And we still haven't figured it out. We police always look for the obvious, but this wasn't normal. Nah, not even for California. When something like this is chasing you, you hope you find it before it finds you. If there was any hope, we didn't have it. We didn't know a damn thing.
It's when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, you can't get to it.
Blood Beach, it's an okay place to visit, but I wouldn't want to die there.
Jason, in 1980, director Jeffrey Bloom, whose IMDb profile pic is framed next to a bunch of flowers for some reason, that's really hitting the nail on the head there, I suppose, directed a little film called Blood Beach, a movie about a beach that eats. I think. I've never seen this movie. I know that it's supposed to be terrible, because I think for me, this fits into one of those categories of you can just stay off the beach and there's no movie. It's sort of like The Mangler. Just don't go near the Mangler. There's that. What is the movie about the bed that kills? Just don't go on the bed. The entire premise of this movie makes no sense to me, but that doesn't matter because this is FIlmjitsu. So you had to spend what I assume was an unbearable hour and a half of your life with this film. Happy summer. It's hot J summer.
Yeah.
I want to know, how was Blood Beach to you?
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned Jeffrey Bloom, because he actually directed one of my most hated theater-going experiences, and that was the movie Flowers in the Attic. So it's funny that his IMDb profile pic would have flowers. I think he's trying to latch onto that bit. It was an absolutely awful adaptation of the V.C. Andrews thriller, and is definitely one of the worst films I've ever seen. This also is one of the worst films I have ever seen. It's awful, relentlessly boring, and it lacks anything even remotely resembling suspense. I think the thing to take away from it more than anything is that it hangs its hat on a tagline that idiotically mocks Jaws 2's tagline. So Jaws 2, which is, the sequel to arguably the greatest action thriller of all time.
Absolutely.
Its tagline was, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water. Pretty great, right?
Yeah, right.
In Blood Beach, there's a scene where John Saxon, yes, the John Saxon, once again playing a cop. I swear to God, he wore the exact same outfit in Nightmare on Elm Street. He says in this movie, the tagline for this movie, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water, you can't get to it. You've got to be fucking serious. He delivers this line like his life depends on it. And the lead character guy that's there with him, actor David Huffman, looks like he's suppressing a laugh, but also seems kind of disgusted. And
like he just discovered, like he's questioning his life choices while the camera's rolling.
100%. And that really sums up what Blood Beach is. What's it about? A beach monster that eats people, and then the police, which, by the way, includes an intolerably awful Burt Young, who seems to be ad-libbing his way through everything.
When somebody does a crime like this, there's only one place to look, and it ain't under no beach.
No? Then where?
In the headquarters of the American go-to-hell Nazi Party.
These police just pontificate and dick around while a harbor patrolman named Harry tries to rekindle a romance with his ex, whose mom was eaten in the first scene. Oh, and his current girlfriend, she's eaten too. Oh. So that just clears the way for the great rekindling.
Did these cops not consider for a second that maybe he was just killing these women and burying them at the beach?
Bro, everybody around this cop dies. It was the first thing. I was like, if anybody was worth their salt at all, this guy would be behind bars right now. But no, he's like the only one. He gets up every day. You know how this guy commutes to work? He's got a tiny blue skivvies that he wears every day, and then this orange vest that he just throws on with no shirt. And he just walks out and he swims. And this is what the harbor patrolman does. He swims. He's in the bay when the mom gets eaten at the beginning and her stupid dog is yapping and the lady just gets pulled in. They basically like half bury the character actor, you know, like and then they just wave their arms around like, ah! and then they pull them under. And I got to say, the effect of them actually getting pulled into the sand is pretty great. Like it did make me wonder, like how did they do that? Like what was the mechanism under the sand?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because you said something earlier that it just clicked with me.
Yeah.
Did you say there's a monster under the beach?
There's a monster under the beach.
So wait a second. So the beach is not eating people. There's a monster under.
No, there's not. Right.
So this is Tremors. Is that what you're telling me?
Jesus, you know, it is kind of like Tremors. It really is. It didn't even occur to me, too.
I went this whole time thinking that the beach.
At first, you have no idea, and it's inconsistent. I will say, what you see of this creature is inconsistent. Not only that, the way the thing devours is inconsistent. If it devours a young woman, surprisingly, her clothes are shredded off, and you see them under the sand in these darkly shot sequences where, strangely, their breasts are lit very well, but that's about it. When it's men, of course, you don't see any of that.
Right. They just one whole bite.
Right, exactly. The other thing about this that's really bizarre is it almost like had a tapas sort of approach to what it ate, because the portion sizes were really different each time, right? For the first thing it does is it eats this lady, but then the next time it only just bites the head off a dog. Like, was it still full? What was it doing? The next time it's a guy, but then it like bites the dick off a rapist or something. Like,
what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a sexual assault under a boardwalk at one point that, of course, like the breasts fall out and it's unsavory to say the least.
Yeah.
But the guy gets his, so there's some sort of moral justice that happens there. I don't know.
Tapas. It's an appetizer for the meal that never comes. That's tapas.
We found it! We found it! We found the guy's wiener!
No! Come over here, those low life kids.
This is probably the worst movie I've watched for this show. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yeah. There, it is.
I feel so good about that.
It is intolerably poorly paced and written.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a police procedural mixed with a slasher horror film that's trying to cash in on the beach craze started by Jaws.
Right.
And these two are not Oreos and milk. These two they do not go together in any way, shape, or form. It's like two different movies. It's so poorly shot, so poorly recorded, so poorly directed, Mike, that the lead actor, his name's David Huffman, he plays Harry. He honestly changes tone so much from scene to scene. And at one point, I feel like his hair changed so much from scene to scene that I actually couldn't follow who he was on camera because the cinematography was so god-awful. The lighting was awful. There were like these interesting, cool shots once in a while. Like there was one great scene where Harry's talking to the daughter of the woman that got eaten. I don't even know her name. I can't remember what it was.
The daughter of the woman who got eaten by the beach. Okay, all right.
So they're standing profile, silhouetted, and there's this lovely shimmering light. It's one of the only good shots. And they knew it, and they do this entire thing of exposition during the shot. And Huffman just kind of goes for broke in this scene for no reason. He just starts really over emoting the whole scene. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, he was joking in the last scene. Like, he changes tone so radically. So it's kind of weird because I imagine that Huffman probably would have loved to have buried this film in his resume, but sadly, he died only a few years later. He died in 1985 at 39 years old. He was murdered.
Whoa.
Yeah, in a botched robbery. And he was stabbed with a screwdriver and died. Absolutely awful. The murderer got sentenced to 26 years in 1986. So it's kind of like this tragic thing. I think this guy would have done much better work, I'm sure. And sadly, this is kind of near the last of the things that he did. It feels bad. It feels wrong. This poor guy.
Yeah, it's just that this isn't going anywhere. I mean, either you have ideas that I can understand and act on, or you got a lot of scientific mumbo-jumbo, which is as useless as whiskers on a sausage. So what's it going to be? Mumbo-jumbo.
This is awful. Mike, it's shot in 4x3 on like bleached out Kodachrome.
Wow.
It looks like it's 16 millimeter. Everything is either blown out or too dark. What's crazy is the cinematographer. His name is Stephen Poster. You would think that there's no way that anyone would ever hire this guy again, but somehow this guy went on to do Big Top Pee-wee and Rocky V before becoming Richard Kelly's go-to director of photography. So this guy who shot the travesty that is Blood Beach did Donnie Darko, Southland Tales, and The Box.
Unreal,
right? I can't imagine that anybody had a career after this, especially this guy, Jeffrey Bloom. In the first 2 minutes of this thing are the credits as they roll. And I swear to God, I saw Jeffrey Bloom's name like 6 times. You couldn't lay more claim to a turd. And here he was like, I did this and I did this. Look at my movie. This movie is intolerable almost all the way through.
Sure, yeah.
But there is one scene where it almost seemed to know that it was impossibly stupid. Or at least the actors sort of figured it out, or one actor did. There was a woman whose husband goes missing. And she's not really a character in the film at all, except for this one scene where she has this pointless discussion with Burt Young in the police station. And he's interviewing her, and she's going into such alarmingly specific detail about what her husband was wearing and what he looks like and who he is.
Any jewelry?
Yes, he's wearing a Florentine gold pinky ring. It was kind of like yours, except it wasn't smooth like that, and it had a tiger's eye and a Black on black, luminous dial, electronic 17-jewel scuba watch with a matching black band. You know, the band with the kind of little holes cut out.
It is so ludicrously dumb, but I feel as though the actress knew. But Burt Young, he kind of would look at her almost like she farted. You know, like he has this face like, And there was a black cop that he was always working with. And Burt Young would make these assertions or these pontifications or whatever. And the black cop's eyebrows would just always raise a little bit. And he'd kind of look at him like, get this guy off the set. You know, it just.
Well, you're telling us that somebody just took the little doggy and ripped his head off?
Oh. Well, plainly speaking, yes. But it's only a guess, mind you. No hard evidence. No human skin caught in the wound. No hair.
Even the hangnail?
For God's sakes, Roy.
Oh, come on. We're not talking about somebody's kid. We're talking about a dead dog. I gotta dance around on tippy toes to keep from offending anybody around here.
Excuse me, Miss Hunter. You know, you're an ass, Roy Cohn.
What?
You heard me. Now you go outside and wait in the car.
And it's funny, it was about a year, I think this was about a year or two before Burt Young played the dad in Amityville, The Possession.
Right.
The second Amityville movie.
Yeah.
Where he played this absolute asshole.
Right,
you know, so here I felt like he was almost in that mode already. Like he was just making that hay and seeing where it was going to take him.
I mean, what were they going to do? Fire him from Blood Beach? That's, I bet he didn't even read the script. He was probably just making it up in the moment.
He probably was, because I don't think there could have really been a script, or if there was, it was sort of done by numbers, because there were so many cop characters that, again, you lose sight of who the lead character is. I guess it's Patrolman Harry, but he sort of disappears for long stretches, and he's replaced by John Saxon, who keeps delivering these long soliloquies to a room full of other cops. This movie has it all to some extent, but it's all done poorly. Like, for instance, they decide to load up underneath the beach with explosives, almost makes you think of like Bill Murray in Caddyshack or something.
Right.
They just put all these explosives in this basement, and then as soon as they see it and they look at it and it moves, they just fucking explode it, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. That's it.
So they just blow the big monster up one time.
Except because the scientist said that it might be able to regenerate, there's all of these shots. You know, there's always like, but the killer is still alive at the end of the movie, right?
Right.
There's all these little shots of small pools of sand starting to sink behind different people. And it's almost like it was a battle of the ending scene. Like, which one is it going to be that's going to be the last? Let's just include them all.
Did they blow it up into like a tiny bunch of little blood beaches? Is that what happened? Is like all the little chunks turn into their own little individual blood beach monsters?
That's kind of how it felt at the very end. Yeah,
Ooh.
That's kind of how it felt. They made the situation that much worse. Get ready for Blood Beach 2, you know? It's just absolutely awful. But I'm going to say this because, as I said, this movie doesn't have a central character that it really, truly focuses on. It meanders and it sort of loses itself. And it has this other character in it who, for some reason, keeps witnessing everything that's happened, but the cops never question, they never talk. It's this vagrant lady that just meanders through the movie. She's never eaten. You don't really know what happens to her. She just witnesses a lot of it. And I think, Mike, that David Lynch saw Blood Beach in 1981, and he took some of his narrative carelessness from it. Like this movie doesn't care about any of its lead characters or anything. And then it kind of weaves, like it does what Lost Highway does. It does what Mulholland Drive does. And not only that, but Mulholland Drive has this vagrant character. And I'm like, did he see this and did it touch? And then weirdly enough, when they first show the monster on like a little screen, like a CRT screen, it looks like one of Lynch's worms from Dune.
From Dune? Oh man, I have to tell you, I did not have David Lynch on my Blood Beach bingo card. Like, where did you find this film? So there's more than one version, like Plex. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say this absolutely sounds to me like a Sam's Club Taquitos Plus streaming service. Like, yeah, all right.
This is the one movie that Crackle owns the rights to. Any movie that has somebody retrieve an eye from the sand on the beach and the eye has no sand on it. Like, think about it. You go to the beach with your eyes in your head, and if the wind kicks up, you can build sandcastles out of it, right?
Yeah.
But this guy pulls up a pristine eye out of the beach. Nothing, no sand on it.
No
at
sand
all.
anywhere.
That tells you all you need to know about Blood Beach. There's no reason for anyone ever in the history of ever to watch this film. If you see it coming your way, run, go into the water where you're safer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You know I fucking hate the beach, right? I hate the beach. I hate going to the beach. This lily white skin of mine burns immediately. The fucking sand gets everywhere. There's always garbage like cigarette butts. And everybody's screaming fucking kids. I hate the beach. And the ocean, like the ocean looks nice, but it's salty, so it's just fucking gross. I hate everything about the beach. And my wife always wants to go to the beach and like walk around and check it out. And there's nothing that sounds worse to me than spending a perfectly good Saturday just frying yourself on the ocean. I hate the fucking beach. So I'm so glad that you're the one that had to watch this, because god damn it, I hate everything about the beach.
I think you've just perfectly transitioned into our bottom 5 beach scenes and my specific approach to bottom 5 beach scenes. You pretty much articulated it to the point where I don't really need to say anything.
Well, then I guess that being the case, I might as well just keep going, because yes, we did our bottom 5 beach scenes, and I tried for this list to be a little bit more traditional and just think of bad beach scenes, not bad things that happen at the beach. You kind of cautioned against that when I set this up. I didn't want to do the Alex Kittner scene from Jaws. I guess that's technically the boardwalk, but yeah, Jaws won't be anywhere on the list. I really did think about those movies that have scenes on the beach, and those scenes are just fucking terrible. And so for me at number 5, look no further than kind of anything from Blue Hawaii starring Elvis Presley. So I guess I'll just go with the No More sequence. This is where Elvis and a bunch of dudes in shorty shorts sit on a boat, and Elvis strums an acoustic guitar and sings, and the whole thing is in perfect studio quality.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I love Elvis music. That's fine. But these Elvis goes to the beach, Blue Hawaii thing, it's not for me. And I think one of the things that I always found the most obnoxious about it is that it's just a perfect studio quality song happening while the movie is playing. Like, playing a guitar outside at the beach doesn't sound like this. So why give me the stupid fucking beach movie? Just give me like an Elvis album and I'll listen to it. I don't need anything about this. I hate these movies. I really don't know that there's any movie that Elvis is in that I could tell you I enjoy. So it doesn't take a lot for me to get to an Elvis film when it comes to a bottom 5. So there's also a corgi retrieving a lady's bikini top from the ocean for some reason. I don't know. None of the
copper tone reference.
Yeah, I guess.
I kind of like Anne Margaret, so I think that just the eye candy of Anne Margaret in some of those films I would be down with. But yeah, they're pretty intolerable.
I guess they're all really just eye candy movies because, I mean, Elvis is in like his hunkiest and he's not wearing a shirt, which, you know, there weren't an awful lot of opportunities for movie stars in the 50s to not be having shirts on unless you put him in a movie where that made sense, right? Elvis was either wearing his cowboy stuff or, you know, his army stuff. So they needed a good reason to have Elvis doff his kit, as you like to say, right? So they finally found, we got ourselves like an Elvis Presley topless scene. And so that was good, I guess, but God, you could have skipped everything else about it.
Oh, fair enough. My approach, you sort of articulated really well, but I did want to say that I disqualified a certain kind of movie, and that was war movies.
Yes.
So I decided no Saving Private Ryan or Dunkirk, although I will say that 100% they would have been acceptable answers because they're definitely beach scenes that you would want absolutely nothing to do with.
Right.
And, you know, that would be ditto for the Charlie Don't Surf sequence in Apocalypse Now. So those are ones that I left off. Plus they're good scenes. They're really well done.
That's right. Yeah.
So my approach was exactly as you articulated. Look, I do like the beach. I like to swim in the ocean, but there are things that I really do hate about going to the beach. So my bottom 5 is framed around the things that I hate when I go to the beach and movies that best represent those.
Okay.
So at my number 5, getting sand in uncomfortable places. And I've got to say, From Here to Eternity in 1953 has probably the most iconic kissing scene in cinema history. Certainly, maybe the most iconic beach scene this side of Alex Kittner.
Yeah.
It was Burt Lancaster's idea to make out with Deborah Kerr while lying down in the surf instead of how it was written in the screenplay with them standing. The adulterous characters they play were written into a far more racy beach scene in the book upon which the film was based, but the censor board would never allow for that kind of thing back in 1953. In fact, having them entangled the way they were was pretty racy stuff. And it stands today, considering most people say it's one of the most romantic scenes in cinema history. And one of the reasons people think that is because no one in their right mind would actually do it. Imagine how into someone you would have to be to lay down with the ocean just dumping sand and salt water right up into your ass crack as you're trying to abso-fucking-lutely not. And then they're soaking wet and they go and lie on a sandy beach towel afterward. No.
Oh, that's my least favorite thing people do in beach movies, when they're all wet and then they roll in the sand afterwards.
Roll in the sand.
Oh,
yes.
Why would anyone do that? The beach is the fucking worst.
Well, it's for that reason that I've somehow worked an absolute classic into a bottom 5.
I'm impressed. That's usually my cup of tea. My number 4, Jason, is the Trojan horse sequence in the 2004 Wolfgang Peterson Sword and Sandals debacle that was the film Troy, starring Brad Pitt. This entire movie is ridiculous garbage. But the scene where Peter O'Toole and Orlando Bloom, and just let that duo sink in for a minute, right? The scene where they stand on the beach and ponder the Trojan horse is just so mawkishly stupid. This movie, it's not smart enough to be historically accurate, and it isn't dumb enough to embrace the fantasy elements of the Odyssey. So instead, it just kind of depicts the story as this super earnest beefcake epic, which does not work. But what really doesn't work is two grown men looking at this giant, obviously hollow wooden horse and trying to make sense of it. It is made all the worse by that enormous disparity in on-screen gravitas between Peter fucking O'Toole and Orlando Bloom. So on about 5 different levels, this is a bottom 5 beach scene for me.
What is this? An offering to Poseidon? The Greeks are praying for a safe return home. I hope the sea god spits in their offering. Lets them all drown at the bottom of the sea. This is a gift. We should take it to the temple of Poseidon.
I think we should burn it.
Burn it, my prince. It's a gift to the gods.
Father, burn it.
At my number 4, as I was talking about things I don't like about the beach, other people was definitely part of it. And that would be best represented for me by the film One Crazy Summer, directed by Savage Steve Holland, a film that I actually quite like. It's an 80s comedy, stars a very young John Cusack, a very young Demi Moore. Cusack plays Hoops, who has a budding affection for Moore's character, Cassandra, who's a singer-songwriter. It also boasts this really great ensemble cast, which includes some 80s staples like Curtis Armstrong and Bobcat Goldthwait as Hoops' sort of eccentric friends. Another friend of his is played by Joel Murray, who's yet another Bill Murray sibling. He tried to grab a little bit of his brother's limelight and at best ended up with a tiny bit of zest. And maybe the reason that he ended up opening a restaurant called Caddyshack with his brothers rather than landing any bigger roles is because of what his character endures. And what it is inexplicably, he is buried up to his neck for some reason in a beach scene. Like, they didn't explain it. He's just there.
He gets creep showed,
which is another one that I left off because it's too good a scene.
It's a great scene.
It's a
great scene.
So he's sitting there and then he asks for some shade. So one of the guys puts a seat above his head and then a random larger person comes because this is the 80s. So they make hay with obesity, right? This person walks over and proceeds to sit down, has headphones on, can't hear George's protests, sits down and then continues to eat just an enormous bag of food. There's dropping chicken bones and stuff right in front of him, and then pulls out an enormous can of chili and starts to eat that as well. And George just starts going, no, like that. And then you cut to like the EMTs racing down the beach, and they've got to come and save George. And they start battling over who has to give him mouth to mouth to bring him back to life. It's all a stupid sequence. It's really dumb. What's funny is they do it again later on in the film. The same thing. He ends up under a beach chair and the same person sits down again. Absolutely stupid. Otherwise, the movie's really good and I recommend it. But this is a terrible scene. And if it weren't for other people on the beach, none of that would have happened to poor George. Or Joel Murray.
I don't know if there's anything we're going to find worse anywhere on our lists than beach chili. No. Beach chili? Who the fuck is eating chili at the beach? Are you kidding me? That's disgusting. That is sickening. My number 3, I'm blaming this one on you. This is your fault. I never, and I mean never, ever, ever would have seen this movie if it wasn't for you. So fuck you, Santo, because if your love for Madonna didn't exist, I never would have watched any part of Swept Away. Yeah. That Guy Ritchie remake of an Italian film with
absolute
Madonna.
Mess. Yeah.
It's what a piece of shit this movie is. Oh my God. I mean,
why were you watching it? I didn't tell you to watch this.
No, because you love Madonna so much. And you just, every time you get a chance to talk about Madonna, you talk about how you love Madonna. And there was one day where I was like trying to find a thing. And I think my wife and I were trying to find a movie, which is always hard. And so I was like, well, I guess, Santa loves Madonna. We'll watch this. And I started it and holy hell. And you know what? So just pick a scene. I guess I'll go with that scene where they were throwing a squid at each other or whatever. It was supposed to be a cute squid fight, something. God damn. This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I only have you to blame for it. So that's why it's on my list.
So because I love Madonna. That's why.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Well,
number 3 on my list.
That's as good a rationale as any.
Am I wrong?
I absolutely adore Madonna. Yeah, I do. But you know what? To be perfectly honest, if she's acting in a film, it's probably terrible.
Okay.
Just leave it at that. If it's not Desperately Seeking Susan, it's probably awful. So
okay. Well, I could have used that information years ago.
Well, my number 3, sunburns, man. Sunburns. You get the worst ones at the beach. Best represented by 1985 Summer Rental, a dumb comedy that pretty much nails every 80s trope, but in a reasonably entertaining way. John Candy plays a stressed-out family man who brings his wife and 3 children to a dilapidated beach shack during peak season and experiences all the horrors one would expect, including boating accidents, annoyingly crowded beaches, and of course, the kind of sunburn that leaves one looking like a well-boiled lobster. And it's because of that sunburn, which Candy's character gets right at the beginning of the film, that's why Summer Rental lands on my bottom 5 beach scenes. I'll admit, I love this movie. I was a big John Candy fan, and matching him up with Richard Crenna as a douchey real estate mogul and yachtsman, and Rip Torn as a, quote, pirate named Scully was genius. Not to mention the Goonies' Kerry Green in an early role. And you've got this slice of 80s comedy heaven that ends, of course, with a regatta pitting the good guys versus the bad guys after a glorious montage sequence set to Jimmy Buffett's Turning Around. So you gotta go with Summer Rental. Sunburns are absolutely awful. Candy looked like he actually had one in the movie. It didn't look like makeup, man. So that's why it lands on my number 3.
I mean, a light-skinned, heavy-set fella getting a burn at the beach, I think I can understand what that's about. My number 2, sir, and it would be hard to imagine that we did this bottom 5 list without this film making an appearance somewhere. It's pretty much every single part of The Blue Lagoon. The 1980 Brooke Shields movie about shipwrecked teenagers who get super horny for each other, and that's kind of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, okay, there's a lot about this movie that is weird and uncomfortable and increasingly problematic as the years have gone by. I did a little bit of digging, and as best I can tell, Brooke Shields has always maintained that she was 14, 15 years old when the movie was being made. She has always maintained that she was treated well on the set, that she was protected on the set, that she was, she never really came out and said that it was a negative experience for her, but I do not care, because any film that takes an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old and basically the whole idea is that they're naked the whole time, it's a weird fucking thing. Now, it's from a novel, but man, the whole thing is sort of titillating, and that's the point. Like, it's this exploration of human sexuality.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, because here's the thing. If you were to take 2 young children and abandon them on a beach, there is an interesting story about what could happen to those 2 people, like growing up and having to learn to survive on a beach from childhood that does not have to involve all the horniness. Like, there's a really interesting survival story that maybe you could tell there. And instead, The Blue Lagoon just goes for like as much preteen flesh as it can possibly manage. It's gross. Everything about it's gross. And so that's why it's my number 2.
You're such a silly dodo, Richard. We're never getting off this island.
Thanks to you.
This is where we live. This is our home, now and forever.
No! I could never live here forever with just you. I don't even like you. You never used to laugh at me. You never used to have secrets you wouldn't tell me.
Well, you're not so perfect either, Mr. Richard Lestrange. I've seen you playing with it. And I'll tell your father if he ever gets here.
You? I hate you!
You almost hit me!
Take it back! Take back what you said!
I've seen it all. What happens after you've been doing it a long time?
Shut up! That isn't fair peeking. I don't peek on you.
That's a lie. You're always staring at my puppies.
Only 'cause they look so funny. You know what you look like now, Em? You look like one of those pictures Patty had in his drawer. One of his hoochie-coochie girls.
I do not. Hoochie-coochie, hoochie-coochie. Stop that, Richard, or I'll never talk to you again.
Hoochie-coochie, hoochie-coochie. See him jiggle, wiggle a check.
Well, can't talk about the beach without talking about things that live in the water at the beach. And at my number 2, jellyfish, man.
Ooh.
So I'm going with a scene from 2012's The Paperboy, directed by Lee Daniels. This is a wild, weird, wacky movie, and I'm not sure anyone involved quite understood what they were doing with it. It has this beach scene that takes two of my biggest beach fears, or fears in general, and combines them. About a third of the way into the movie, Zac Efron's character Jack, who has fallen in love with Charlotte, a sexually adventurous woman played by Nicole Kidman, storms off toward the beach after Charlotte mocks his lust for her. While he's in the water, he's repeatedly stung by jellyfish and nearly drowns, just barely pulling himself back to the surf when he's spotted by a few sunbathing girls. The girls quickly assess that he's having an allergic reaction to the jellyfish sting, and one of them pulls her bathing suit bottom off as an attempt to urinate on him because she's heard that that's the quickest way to cleanse the wounds. So Kidman's character then runs over and chases the girls away so she can pee on him instead, and thus further control him by saving his life. Do I need to say anything more? It's like jellyfish stings and Nicole Kidman peeing on the wound. I mean, does it get worse? I mean, unless you're into that sort of thing, but...
This is Lee Daniels, like the butler?
Precious Lee Daniels, yes.
Has a peeing on people movie at the beach?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
You look so perplexed.
Yeah, but I gotta be honest with you, like, I'd take a hot piss on Zac Efron too if I had the chance, so.
Do you know that, I guess Lee Daniels got a little bit nervous about including it in the film and almost cut it out. And Kidman said, "You made me piss on Zac Efron. Man up and use it," is what she said to him. So. Jesus.
All right. Well, okay. I think I'm going to need a moment. Honestly, would you go ahead and do your number one so that I can regroup before I do mine?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do my number one. My number one thing that I fear at beaches probably are tidal waves. Absolutely scary. And I can think of no bigger one than the one featured in 1998's Deep Impact. Tia Leone and Maximilian Schell as father and daughter, patching up their various traumas. They're standing on the beach at the end of this grand Mimi Leader directed film. Robert Duvall has, with his astronaut crew, sacrificed himself, splitting the meteor in half, but still half of it's coming down onto Earth. It rockets overhead. Leone and Schell are having their father-daughter moment, and then it hits in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. Boom. And you just see these two little specks on the beach with the biggest tidal wave in the history of all tidal waves in cinema. Just take them over and annihilate them out of existence. Absolutely awful beach scene. Definitely one of my biggest fears. So that one takes the top spot for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Jake, because there's not a lot I'm afraid of, genuinely.
Right.
But one of the things that absolutely terrifies me is massive amounts of water, like a flood. And and it's a really weird and specific fear, but it's the idea of like not being able to protect my kids. Sometimes you see this footage of just like a tidal wave taking out a town, and just there's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can run. And the idea of your kid sort of being pulled away from you by this overwhelming power of this mass of water is terrifying to me.
Right. So note to self, make sure that Mike watches The Impossible. Okay, great.
No, you're not wrong. That would be a perfect film for me, because I have been like dead ass terrified of exactly that movie. Maybe the only thing worse could be a film called Tidal Spider, where it's a tidal wave of spiders. That could be worse.
Well, what's your number one, since you made me go first?
I think you know what my number one is, and we're going to fucking get into this right now.
What?
Jason, we talked a little bit about this offline after our last episode when we knew that this was going to be the bottom five that we're going to do. We're going to talk about M. Night Shyamalan's Old.
Oh,
because God damn it with this movie, Jason. And honestly, a little peek behind the curtain here. recently you and I were at a public event. Like we were together. There were other people around. And I leaned over to you before kind of things got started. And I said, hey, we're talking about M. Night Shyamalan so much. Like maybe we should put him in the Hall of Lame. And you just like publicly and loudly scolded me. You were like, fucking stop doing that. Right. But I feel bad because I feel like we beat up on this guy a lot.
Well, you do. Yeah.
Which is funny because he's a director that, like, if I had to cast my lot, I like M. Night Shyamalan. I like his movies. What I discovered is that almost without exception, you and I like opposite movies. Like the ones I like, you don't like. The ones you like, I don't like. And Old is so fucking stupid. And the scene really I want to target is the birth scene. Where these kids see each other and they like have a roll in the hay behind something, and then she comes out and she's instantly pregnant, and then she instantly gives birth because the people in this movie are aging rapidly. Everything. But this movie doesn't even have its own internal logic because, as I have pointed out to you before, if the idea is that the processes of the human body are just going over and over again, all this movie would be these characters shitting their pants the whole time. If that's all it would be. That's the only thing it would be. It would be like, you eat, you shit, you eat, you shit, you eat. And then it's a disgusting idea for a movie, but it doesn't even make sense internally.
Yeah, I think that the struggle here is that there's always the willing suspension of disbelief for which you have none to impart to a medical background. And there would be episodes of the old Twilight Zone that would get away with shit like this with no trouble. But because M. Night does it in a feature-length form, it gives you too much time to think about it. And I think that's where you go. Whereas I didn't even consider this at all. It didn't even occur to me.
But here's the thing. I think because I hear what you're saying. And actually, that's a really great point. Like a Twilight Zone episode where something like this happens, I could get down with, but it's because this film spends so much time trying to make logic out of what's happening. Like the characters are trying to figure it out. The whole thing is like,
I don't think they do, but
it's trying to make sense of what's happening. And sometimes it works one way and other times it works other way. It's inconsistent in how this is working. And maybe in something like a Twilight Zone episode where it's only that 20-minute slice, it wouldn't have enough time to then do it wrong. But it just didn't make any goddamn sense to me. And it became such an eye roll, which is too bad because it is a neat idea.
It is a good idea. And there are some really good ideas throughout it that do work. And there is a sense of suspense and a sense of fear, danger, and tragedy that accompanies these characters, specifically at the end, as the estranged married couple, now old people, have gone through their lives together. It becomes a sort of metaphor for what life really is like, regardless of whether it's sped up. It's sort of like a Benjamin Button kind of shit. You know, it has this sort of tragic end and acceptance. The problem is that when they do go more in depth and there's sort of like a lab and it's all an experiment, and M. Night pulls his shenanigans where he's trying to explain. And you know what? It was fine. I was fine with it. And you're right. We frequently do disagree with the films that we like and don't like with him. I will say that we do agree on a few, and those are his best films typically. So, you know, I don't hate Old. I totally understand why you picked it. Even if you didn't pick it because you hate the movie, it would have been a good one to pick because you want to stay the fuck away from that beach. So either way, you kind of had it. You had your cake and ate it too with that pick. So I think it's a solid pick, but I fundamentally disagree. I think it is an entertaining and thrilling film. I don't think it's a great film, but I don't think it's a terrible film. So
I think that everybody should just be shitting their pants the whole movie, and that's it.
It's a great film. I think John Waters would be interested in taking that property. Maybe you want to get that to him.
Jason, we're at that time in the show. We're going to do Pick Two, Kick Two, the segment where I'm going to give us 4 films and we have to decide which 2 we're going to keep and which 2 we're going to send out into the newly dubbed Forbidden Zone.
Forbidden Zone.
That's right. So I thought that this week we've been talking about beach movies. We've been talking about summer movies. I wanted to stay in that lane and I wanted to make it difficult. I'm not sure if this is going to be as hard for you as it is for me. I'm hoping that it will be. So here are the 4 summertime movies that we have to choose from. Movies set in and around the summer and that's important to the story. They are, of course, Jaws, Dazed and Confused, Stand By Me, and Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing. Oh, geez. Oh, boy.
This is not
summer-themed movies. Okay. No, because you love Dazed and Confused. You talk about it so often. And
I'm not sure where you stand on Dazed and Confused or Stand By Me, really. I thought maybe this might be really easy for you. It might just be Jaws and Do the Right Thing and walk away. But that's not easy for me.
It's not easy for me it's not because of Dazed and Confused, although I do like it and I think it's good. I've only seen it once and it was fine. It's a good movie and I liked it, but it's just not one that I've felt compelled to revisit the way you have, right?
Sure.
It doesn't reach nearly the level that something like Stand By Me did, or Do the Right Thing, or Jaws. Jaws has flirted with being my favorite film of all time, period, top. So that's in. There's no way I'm taking it out. So I'm left with either Stand By Me or Do the Right Thing. Stand By Me is one of the most beautiful tales of preteen, teen life. And the way those characters and those performances, the earnestness of it all, the nostalgia factor.
The River Phoenix, right? I mean, we have so few River Phoenix performances. That would mean getting rid of one of those.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing is visually spectacular. It has so much great acting. The energy of the camera, the energy of the editing. It's a better
Do the Right
film.
Thing. And Do the Right Thing is number 24 on the BFI Sight and Sound list. Like, this isn't just a movie that I hold in high regard. It's a movie that the entire film thinking community holds in very high regard. It's hard to find a fault with Do the Right Thing. And it's a movie that's only become more relevant over the course of time, unfortunately.
No, I know.
And it's hard to imagine. And that's why I like to do this when I come up with these lists, right? Sometimes you want to have it's not just your favorite, sometimes a film has to mean something as well to make it a little bit harder to kick.
Obviously, I'm going to relate way more to Stand By Me because I grew up like that with those. I did things that were very similar. I would go with 4 friends into the woods and wander and waste afternoons together. So I relate so much to it, but it's not a part of cinema history, I feel, the way that Do the Right Thing is. It's not a seminal film. Right. And I think that I can't, in good conscience, cut Do the Right Thing just because it doesn't represent me.
Right.
I think because there are so few films that represent Black culture the way that Do the Right Thing does, I think that it's a necessary film. So in this case, it's not even what do I like better or what I'm closer to. It almost feels like it's moral. So I think for me, it's Jaws and Do the Right Thing. What about you?
Part of me is tempted to kick Jaws just because it's so obvious. But maybe I'll just replace it off the list entirely. Maybe we'll just do Weekend at Bernie's and call it good. I don't know. Maybe I thought about not including it because it was such a lock, I think, for both of our lists. And I think, yes, it has to be for me as well, especially after a couple summers ago and seeing the 3D re-release, which was phenomenal, by the way.
It was.
I can't believe I would ever get up here and rave about a 3D anything, but
I know.
Yeah. And you're right. Stand By Me was essentially my childhood. I did a lot of dumb shit in the woods with friends. That was literally my entire summer. all my time growing up. So many things that should have got me killed, should have gotten my friends killed. But Dazed and Confused is a movie that I loved because although maybe Stand By Me felt like my childhood, Dazed and Confused was the movie when I was a kid that I sort of romanticized those teenage years, the partying, everything about Dazed and Confused was just so goddamn attractive to a young kid who didn't really have access to any of that kind of stuff. You know, I came to Dazed and Confused before I was driving a car or any of those sorts of things. It's a film I just find myself like wanting to go back to that party over and over and over again. I have this little bit of melancholy that happens every time the party at the Moon Tower comes to an end and they start playing Nazareth's Love Hurts and they put the red Solo cup upside down over the keg and you know the party's coming to an end, which means the movie's coming to an end. And I don't know, it always kind of hits me right in the feels. And so I think as much as it seems insane not to keep a film as powerful as Do the Right Thing, I think it's going to be Jaws and Dazed and Confused for me.
Wow,
if I'm really going to stick to like summer movies, like movies that I want to watch in the summertime, about the summertime, that's it for me.
That's very different because that's a very different criteria for sure.
Yeah.
You know, Do the Right Thing is an uncomfortable summer.
Yeah, that's
you don't
exactly
want to
it.
be there.
That's right. But I needed to come up with some way to parse out how I'm going to choose these
Fair
things
enough.
because
All right.
this was actually a lot harder than I expected, even with Jaws on the list. So, okay. So here's my final two. Are you ready? My final two are going to be Weekend at Bernie's and Meatballs. That's the end.
Mike, how do you follow up a groundbreaking, much-loved action thriller by removing your lead actor who brought in all the box office and you replace him with Jason Patrick? Mike, that's right. I suggest you put on a life jacket and take some Dramamine because you're about to ride on an ocean liner right to the heart of bad sequels by watching Speed 2
Cruise Control. Oh.
A movie that Sandra Bullock herself has called, quote, the biggest piece of crap ever made.
She's not wrong.
It's got a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes and a woeful 3.9 out of 10 on IMDb. But its biggest claim to fame is somehow managing to get 2 thumbs up from a notorious review by Siskel and Ebert.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In fact, Ebert said that it was the review he was asked about the most because it proved to many, in their eyes, that he was a hack critic.
Wow.
So maybe you can settle that debate once and for all.
The film that broke Roger Ebert?
So as for our bottom 5 to accompany Speed 2 Cruise Control, we're going to discuss our bottom 5 film replacements, which I'm defining as actors who are recast in a sequel or reboot, or characters that replace other characters from a previous film, like Jason Patrick's does here for Keanu Reeves' character. So that's what you got for our next episode, Mike. You'll be watching Speed 2 Cruise Control. What do you think?
I don't know if you picked this because you know that Speed might be one of my most favorite go-to, always scratches that itch action flicks.
Yes, that's why.
Oh.
See, I keep doing this similar thing, and it is a death of a thousand cuts. I take things you love, and then I show you the dark side or the awful of them. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Here it's going to work. Can't wait. Next time you're doing Speed 2. Until then, we've been your hosts. I am Jay.
And I am Mike.
And we'll see you next time.
Stop
What is Janos Poha doing on the beach with?
I'm going to tell you, much better movie. If you made it exactly the same thing, except it's like the character of Janos on the Blue Lagoon with Brooke Shields, that would be a way better movie.